Good evening from a Ballina bathed in light, where thousands of people have lined the streets of Joe Biden's ancestral hometown. Addressing the crowd from St. Muradec's Cathedral, the US president quotes poetry and says Mayo has become part of his soul.
I won't stay still until I shall stand in the center of County Mayo.
Earlier, during his visit to Knock, President Biden had a chance meeting with the priest who gave his terminally ill son Beau the last rites 8 years ago.
We talked a little bit about grief, about the fact that years can dissipate some grief, but there's some griefs that take years and years to get over, you know.
Also tonight, in the United States, a National Guardsman is arrested for leaking classified defence papers and brought before a court in Boston. Fresh protests in France as a Paris court clears the way for President Macron to raise the pension age from 62 to 64.
Thousands of people turned out here in Ballina tonight, where US President Joe Biden made his final and biggest address of his trip, telling the crowd Mayo has become part of his soul. After arriving on Marine One, President Biden was introduced by Taoiseach Leo Varadkar. Today was the last day of his official trip to Ireland, and it was an emotional day too. Earlier, he visited Knock Shrine, the North Mayo Heritage Centre and the Mayo Roscommon Hospice in Castlebar, where he remembered his son Beau.
Crowds gathered on both banks of the River Moy tonight as the music rang out across the town of Ballina.
What love, what love, what love that you could never give up.
The Coronas, the chieftains and the academic were amongst those entertaining the thousands gathered here. Queues began forming early this afternoon with airport-style security checks in place for the final stop of the US President's tour.
And I've never seen anything like it. It reminds me when the Pope came to Knock.
Well, it's great because I think it's positive. It's a positive communication, about what he wants to do, and it's nice that he's getting such a great welcome from everybody.
And very excited today because Joe Biden's here, and he didn't forget about Mayo.
Former President Mary Robinson took the stage at around 8:30 across the river from her childhood home, where a light was turned on tonight for those who have emigrated from Ireland. She recited a poem by Evan Boland called The Immigrant Irish.
It's about the fact that we didn't always value Irish immigrants. We didn't cherish them enough. We didn't feel they were part of a wider Irish family. We hadn't talked about the Irish diaspora as we do now.
Finally, it seemed the wait was almost over as a helicopter came into sight, the presidential motorcade arriving at the cathedral shortly after.
Please welcome, a son of Ballina and the 46th President of the United States, Joe Biden.
And finally, surrounded by relatives, his sister and son, President Biden addressed the crowd.
I want to say thank you. I heard you all had an impromptu celebration the night I was declared the winner in 2020 election. You decked out the town, I'm told, in red, white, and blue, with cars and crowds gathered in the market square singing the green and the red of Mayo. Well, I tell you what, it means the world to me. It meant the world to me and my entire family to be embraced as Mayo Joe, son of Ballina.
President Biden will return to Dublin tonight and fly to the States in the early hours of the morning. Diane Connor, RTE News.
President Biden's day in Mayo began with his visit to Knock Shrine, where he had a chance meeting with the priest who gave the last rites to his son Beau Biden. Beau died 8 years ago from cancer.
The US President touched down at Ireland West Airport in Mayo shortly after 2 o'clock this afternoon. Stepping from the smaller Air Force One plane used for domestic travel, President Biden was greeted by dignitaries, including the Transport Minister Eamon Ryan. The presidential motorcade then made its way to Knock Shrine. While the visit was a private one, people lined the roads to catch a glimpse of the US President. Parish priest Father Richard Gibbons gave President Biden a tour of the shrine before sharing an umbrella to visit the Chapel of the Apparition, which encloses the original gabled wall where Our Lady is said to have appeared in 1879. Then the unexpected. It emerged that a priest now working at Knock Shrine had performed the last rites for Mr Biden's late son Beau, who tragically died from brain cancer in 2015. Father Frank O'Grady had worked as a US Army chaplain and was assigned to Walter Reed Military Hospital in Washington, where the 46-year-old was treated for 6 weeks before he died. Though unplanned, the President insisted on meeting Father Grady.
We had a nice chat for about 10 minutes. He was delighted to see me and I was delighted to see him. He gave me a big hug and Hunter gave me a big hug. It was like a reunion. And we talked a little bit about grief, about the fact that years can dissipate some grief, but there's some griefs that take years and years to get over. He was emotional today, and I told him, you know, that he was a person of great faith, and he said his faith sustains him.
Afterwards, the Biden family made a private visit to the Mayo Roscommon Hospice, where a plaque installed at the entrance commemorates Beau Biden. The President viewed it alongside his son Hunter Biden and his sister Valerie Biden Owens. Afterwards, Mr Biden went on to the North Mayo Heritage and Genealogical Centre, where he was briefed on his links to the area. A fleet of helicopters carrying the presidential entourage then took in a number of sites in the region. Joan O'Sullivan, RT News.
Well, the thousands of people who had gathered to hear President Biden speak are making their way homewards now, and we can cross live to our Western correspondent Pat McGrath, who is in the middle of the crowds at the moment. Pat, what's it like where you are?
We're here on Pierce Street in Ballina tonight, Katrina, where people, as you say, are making their way home from the banks of the River Moy after that speech from Joe Biden. Perhaps shades of a single transferable speech throughout his visit to Ireland. A lot of references to hope and history throughout. But that really content was something that resonated deeply with people here in Mayo, especially given the emigrant experience here over generations. Many people, of course, left the county, travelling to all corners of the world. Some never came back. And I think their stories were in the hearts of an awful lot of people here in Ballina tonight. Overall, this visit is being seen as a tremendous success for the county. The local authority reckons that it's going to generate huge interest and drive tourism here for years to come. And as well as that, of course, Joe Biden finishing by pressing the right local pulse by referencing Mayo for Sam at the end of the proceedings. So that went down well with the crowd. I think everybody, as they make their way home here, has enjoyed what will be considered a historic night for Ballina and for County Mayo.
Indeed. Pat, thanks for that. And Ray, it's back to you in studio.
Katrina, thank you.